The first rule they teach you is that the forest is a system, a balance. But that night, the balance shifted, and the things that live in the deep, dark parts looked back. Nightbound Bloodline presents 5 Forest Ranger Stories, What I Can't Explain. For most of us, the wilderness is a place of escape. But for the men and women who wear the badge of the Forest Ranger, it is a workplace, a home, and a constant, quiet responsibility. They know its rhythms better than anyone. They can identify every sound, track every animal, and sense when something is out of place. What you are about to hear are 5 accounts from those who patrol the borders of our world. Accounts of moments when the map no longer matched the territory and the familiar rules of nature were rewritten by something ancient and hungry. These are their stories. Story 1. The Stump Watcher. My name is David. I've been a federal forest ranger for 27 years. I've got a wife, 2 grown kids, and a pension I'm counting the days toward. I wasn't a man for ghost stories. My job is facts. Ecology, conservation laws, search and rescue protocols. I've seen bears do funny things, heard mountain lions scream like women, and dealt with more than my share of lost hikers thinking every shadow is a monster. I was a skeptic. I need you to understand that. It happened in a remote sector of the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. Late October 2018. I was on a solo multi-day patrol, checking some remote trail cameras and doing a wellness check on an old backcountry trapper named Eli who hadn't radioed in. The air was crisp, smelling of damp earth and pine. That golden, late afternoon light was slanting through the trees, making everything look cathedral-like. It was quiet, the good kind of quiet. I found Eli's cabin just before dusk. Empty, cold fireplace. No sign of struggle, but his pack and his favorite rifle were still there. That was my first cold trickle of unease. Eli never went anywhere without that rifle. As I was leaving a note, I heard it. A low, rhythmic thump, 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 coming from the tree line about 100 yards out. It wasn't aggressive. It was methodical, like someone or something patiently chopping wood. But it was too late for Eli to be working, and the sound was hollow, wrong, like it was hitting rotten pulp. I called out, "Eli." The thumping stopped. Absolute silence fell. Not just quiet. Silence. No crickets, no wind, no distant birds. The forest had gone dead. And that's when I smelled it. A sweet, cloying odor underneath the pine, like rotting apples and wet, matted fur. I clicked on my high-beam flashlight and swept it toward the sound. Nothing. Just thick, black trunks. I was about to write it off when my light caught something at the edge of a clearing. A giant, lightning-blasted stump, maybe 8 feet tall. And perched on top of it was a figure. My brain short-circuited. It was crouched, naked, its skin a blotchy, grayish-white in the beam. It was impossibly thin, ribs like a ship's hull, arms too long, ending in hands that rested on its knees. But its head, God, its head. It was too large for its body, hairless, with no visible ears. And its face was just smooth. No eyes, no nose, just a slight, lipless slit for a mouth. It didn't move. It just perched. And I knew, with a certainty that froze the blood in my veins, that it was facing me, that it was watching me without eyes. I dropped the light. I couldn't help it. My body just rejected what I was seeing. When I fumbled the beam back up, it was gone. The stump was empty. I stood there, heart hammering against my ribs, listening. The rotten sweet smell was stronger now, overwhelming. And then the thumping started again. Thump, thump, thump. But now it was closer. To my left, I swung the light. Nothing. I started backing toward my truck, my training screaming at me not to run, but every primal instinct begging me to. The thumping moved again. To my right now, keeping perfect pace with my retreat. It was hurting me, playing with me. I could hear something else too, under the thumping, a wet, rhythmic rasping, like air being sucked through that lipless slit. I broke. I ran. I crashed through the brush like a spooked deer, branches whipping my face. I didn't look back. I hit the forestry road, threw myself into my truck, and locked the doors. I sat there for an hour, just shaking, before I could even turn the key. I filed a report. A missing person for Eli. I said I'd heard possible predatory activity. I never mentioned the thing on the stump. Eli's body was found 3 weeks later, 5 miles from his cabin. The coroner said exposure, but the guys who recovered him, they wouldn't talk about it. Just got real quiet, real pale. I put in for a transfer to an urban-adjacent park a month later. I don't go into the deep backcountry alone anymore. Ever. I know what a bear looks like. I know what a sick animal looks like. This was neither. That stump, it wasn't a resting place. It was a watchtower. And I have this terrible, unshakable feeling that when I looked at it, I wasn't the one who found something. I was the one who had been found. Story 2. The Patterns in the Pines. I'm Maya. I'm a wildlife biologist and park ranger in the Adirondacks. My life's work is patterns, migration patterns, growth patterns, weather patterns. I believe in data. What happened, it defied every pattern I know. It was a long-term forestry health survey. We were tracking a specific beetle blight in a remote, old-growth section. For weeks, it was just me, my assistant Sam, and miles of identical pine. We'd grid out a sector, take coarse samples, tag trees. It was meticulous, boring work, until we started noticing the circles. It was Sam who pointed it out first. On our GPS map, the trees we had tagged as stage 4 blight, the deadest, most infected ones, weren't randomly scattered. They formed near-perfect concentric circles over a mile wide. The epicenter was a patch of forest so dense, our satellite imagery was just a green smear. No blight should spread in perfect geometric patterns. It's biologically impossible. We decided to hike to the center. The air grew still. No bird life at all. And the smell? Not decay, but something sharp, almost ozonic, like after a lightning strike. The pines here looked wrong. Not dead, but twisted. Their branches grew in tight, symmetrical spirals, defying their own biology. We reached the center. There was no blight here. Instead, there was a clearing about 50 feet across. The ground was bare, not even moss. And in the exact center stood a single, ordinary-looking sapling. It was healthy, vibrant. Around it, in the dirt, were footprints. Dozens of them. But they weren't animal tracks. They were humanoid, but with toes that were too long, too many joints. And they all led to the sapling, but none led away. Sam whispered, "It's like they all walked here and just vanished into this one little tree." That's when we heard the humming, a low, subaudible vibration that came up through the soles of our boots. It made our teeth ache. The sapling's leaves began to tremble, though there was no wind. The feeling of being washed was a physical pressure. We weren't alone in that clearing. We were surrounded, but by something we couldn't see. Sam pointed a trembling finger at the perimeter. The spiraled pines, they were slowly, imperceptibly rotating. Not the trees themselves, but the pattern of their spirals was shifting, turning like silent gears, aligning with us as we moved. The humming intensified. A sharp, metallic taste filled my mouth. I grabbed Sam's arm. "We have to leave. Now. Don't run in a straight line." We zigzagged out of that clearing, and the entire time, I could feel those invisible patterns recalculating, those unseen eyes tracking our every frantic move. We didn't stop until we hit the truck. We never went back to that sector. I filed the blight data as inconclusive and recommended the area be marked for geological instability. A year later, I pulled the latest satellite imagery. The perfect circles of dead trees were gone. The forest looked uniformly healthy, but in the exact center, a new, perfect circle of twisted, spiraled pines had grown, twice as large as before. I study patterns for a living, and now I live with the terror that the forest itself is studying patterns too, and that we, with our grids and our maps, were just another variable in its ancient, incomprehensible equation. Story 3. The Bridge That Wasn't There. Name's Carl. Retired now, but I put in 35 years with the National Park Service, most of it in the Smokies. I've led more search and rescue ops than I can count. I've found lost kids, stranded climbers, you name it. I know every trail, every creek bed, every dangerous bluff in my district. Or, I thought I did. It was a miserable November day. Cold, pissing rain, fog so thick you could barely see 50 feet. I got a call about a couple of hikers overdue on the Hemlock Ridge Loop. Not unusual. Weather turns, people get turned around. I geared up and headed out. I knew that trail like the back of my hand, even in the soup. I figured I'd find them shivering under a ledge, give them a thermos of coffee, and lead them out. I was following the trail along Grizzly Creek, which runs through a steep, rocky gorge. The water was high and loud. I was calling out, blowing my whistle. Nothing. Then, through the fog, I saw a shape. It was the hikers, a man and a woman, standing on the other side of the creek. The creek was too swollen to cross here, and the trail bridge was another half-mile upstream. But they weren't at the bridge. They were just standing there, on the opposite bank, staring into the fog downstream. Not moving, not responding to my shouts. I yelled, pointed upstream toward the real bridge. They both turned and looked at me. Their faces were blank. Not scared, not relieved, just empty. Then, in unison, they pointed downstream, into the thickest part of the fog where I knew there was nothing but sheer rock walls and white water. I squinted, and my blood went cold. There was a bridge, a covered bridge made of old, dark timber, like something from a century-old postcard. It spanned the gorge in a spot where no bridge had ever been, could ever be built. It was pristine, no rot, no moss. Just this impossible, dry, dark tunnel through the rain. And the hikers started walking toward it. My training kicked in. Stop, I warned. That is not there. Do not cross. They didn't even hesitate. They walked into the mouth of that covered bridge and disappeared into the shadows inside. The fog swirled back, obscuring it. For a few heartbeats, there was just the roar of the water. Then I heard it, from inside the bridge. Not a scream. It was laughter. High, clear, childish laughter that shouldn't have carried over the river's noise, but it did. It was the most out of place, terrifying sound I've ever heard. I was frozen. The laughter cut off abruptly, and then a new sound started. A slow, heavy shhhh click, shhhh click. Like something massive and awkward was dragging itself across the wooden planks of that impossible bridge, toward my side of the gorge. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it coming. I could feel the vibration of its weight through the ground. The fog at the bridge's exit began to swirl, as if something was about to emerge. I broke. I turned and I ran upstream, not looking back. I didn't stop until I hit the real bridge, the one made of steel and concrete I could trust. I called in every ranger I could. We searched for 2 weeks. We never found a trace of those hikers. No footprints leading to the gorge wall, no bodies in the water. Nothing. Their gear was found neatly stacked back at their car. It was like they just stepped off our world. I went back to that spot on a clear, sunny day. Nothing. Just rock and rushing water. I've pored over every historical survey, every old map. There was never a bridge there. But I know what I saw. And now, whenever the fog rolls thick into the valleys, I get a cold dread in my gut. I think that bridge only appears when it's hungry, and it uses lost souls as bait to lure others across, or to lure something out. I don't do search and rescue in the fog anymore, because sometimes the thing you're searching for isn't lost. It's waiting, and it's built a door where no door should be. Story 4. The Silence of the Ravens. I'm Lieutenant James Kovacs, U.S. Army retired. I served 2 tours overseas. Now, I work as a seasonal fire watch ranger in the Sierra Nevadas. I've seen combat. I know fear. What I felt on that mountain, it was different. It wasn't a fear of bullets or bombs. It was a fear of the air itself turning against you. My post was Tower 7, one of the most remote. You're alone for weeks at a time. Your company is the wind, the sun, and the birds. especially the ravens. A colony lived in the crags below the tower. They were my clock, my weather vanes, my comic relief. Smart, noisy, always squabbling or playing on the thermals. I'd even named a few. Their constant cacophony was the sound of life. It happened on a clear August afternoon. No storm on the horizon. But the light, it just began to drain. Like someone was turning down a dimmer switch on the sun. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in as many minutes. My radio, my sat phone, everything electronic just fizzed and died. Total dead air. And then, the silence hit. The wind stopped. Completely. Not a breeze. But the worst of it was the ravens. Their constant chatter cut off mid-squawk. Absolute, perfect silence. I grabbed my binoculars and scanned the crags. I could see them. Dozens of ravens, perched on their usual rocks. But they weren't moving. They were all facing the same direction, north, toward a barren, lightning-scarred ridge. And they were perfectly, unnaturally still. Not a twitch. Like feathered statues. Then, I saw the source. Above the ridge, the air was rippling. Not with heat. It was a patch of sky that looked like oil on water, a shimmering, inverted tear in reality. And from it, things were falling. Not dropping. Drifting. Like black ash or feathers. But as they got closer, I could see they had shape. They were ragged, tattered things. Some like strips of leathery hide, others like long, disjointed insect legs, all slowly spiraling down. They made no sound. They didn't seem to touch the ground. They just dissolved into the shadows of the rocks. And the ravens watched. Every single one, as if awaiting orders. That's when one of the ravens, a big male I called Poe, turned his head, not to look at the sky tier, to look at me, in the tower, a quarter-mile away. Then another turned, and another, until every raven in sight was staring directly at my window. Hundreds of them, in that profound, unnatural silence. The intelligence in those stares wasn't animal. It was ancient and cold and assessing. I felt a pressure build in my skull, a whispering static that wasn't sound but thought. It wasn't language. It was pure intent. Observe. Report. Do not interfere. I couldn't move. I was pinned by that collective gaze. Below, the last of the black shapes drifted from the rippling sky. The tear began to close, the oily shimmer fading. As the last of it vanished, the light rushed back into the world. The wind kicked up with a gasp. My equipment buzzed back to life with a squawk of static. And the ravens, they all moved at once. They shook themselves, let out a single, unified caw that sounded almost normal, and took to the air, going about their business as if nothing had happened. I was debriefed for a week. Geomagnetic storm, they said. Mass bird stupor caused by a freak pressure front. I nodded. I signed their papers. What was I going to say? I finished my season. I never went back to Tower 7. I see ravens now, anywhere, and my skin crawls. In combat, you face an enemy. On that mountain, I wasn't facing an enemy. I was an insect that had accidentally witnessed a military drill from a superior, incomprehensible force. The ravens aren't just birds. They're a network. Sentinels. And for 20 minutes, I saw what they report to. Story 5. The Path of Bones. My name is Anya. I was a backcountry ranger in the Boundary Waters. I loved the solitude, the purity of it. I believed in the balance of nature, life, death, decay, rebirth. A clean cycle. What I found was a perversion of that cycle. It was a severe winter. Record cold. We were doing a wellness check on a line of remote ice fishing huts. My partner, Ben, and I were on snowmobiles. We were following a GPS track along a frozen creek bed, a route we'd used a dozen times. The world was a silent, blue-white masterpiece, until we rounded a bend and saw the trees. They were adorned, not with ice, but with arrangements. Bones, small animal bones, cleaned white, fastened with what looked like fresh, frozen tendon. They were tied in intricate patterns, like macabre dream catchers or fractal symbols. Dozens of trees lining the creek bed. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, artful. The silence here was different too. Not peaceful, watchful. Ben, he laughed, nervous. Some creepy trapper's art project. I didn't laugh. Bone doesn't bleach that white in a single winter. And the skill, it was beyond a trapper. It was liturgical. We shut off our engines. That's when we saw the path. Someone had shoveled the snow off the creek ice. The exposed ice was carved with shallow grooves, more of those swirling, non-repeating patterns. And flanking it was this avenue of remains. It led off the creek and into a stand of dense, dark spruce. The entrance to that spruce grove was framed by two massive, inverted elk skulls, antlers dug into the ground, creating an archway. From deep within that grove, we heard a sound. A low, slow, rhythmic crunch, crunch, crunch. Not the crunch of snow. This was the crunch of compaction, of weight on brittle matter. Ben took a step forward, his curiosity overriding his fear. "Hello," he called. The crunching stopped. Instantly, from the darkness, something unfolded. It was tall, 7 feet at least, and impossibly thin. Its body seemed to be a lattice of shadows and exposed, gleaming white. It took me a second to understand. It was wearing bones. Not as armor, but as exoskeleton. Rib cages, vertebrae, long bones lashed together, moving with a horrible, organic flexibility. Its head was a stag's skull, but elongated, too many points. In the sockets, a deep, moss-green light smoldered. It didn't move toward us. It simply turned its skull. The green light fixed on Ben. And then, from the trees all around us, the bone wind chimes began to tremble and clatter, not in the wind, but in a specific, repeating sequence. A message, a warning. I yelled Ben's name, yanked him back. We ran. We didn't look back. We gunned the snowmobiles and didn't stop until we saw the lake. We reported a dangerous, deranged individual. They found the creek. The bones were gone. The path was gone. Just unbroken snow. No tracks leading in or out. They didn't believe us. Ben quit the service that spring. Moved to Arizona, someplace with no trees. I stayed, but I'm desk-bound now. I can't go into the deep woods. Because I understood something in that creature's gaze. It wasn't a predator. A predator just takes life. This thing, it was a curator. It was tending to the forest's mortal remains, rearranging death into its own terrible design. We don't own the wilderness. We just live in it. But something else, something older, holds the deed. And it's busy decorating.